Hello. All right. Chandrash. Oh, very good. Okay, clearly. Oh, good morning. Hello. I'm talking to myself on mute. This is great. Hello.
Yeah,
Shivai.
hi.
Hey, Shubham. Good morning. Good morning. Has the I feel like good morning. Good morning. I feel like it's almost appropriate, kind of like Christmas time where, kids get together and then they're like, "Hey, has Santa made it to your house yet? Has the Easter bunny visited your house?" It's sort of like, I want to, has the coronavirus like visited your neighborhood yet? Like, boy, what a disruptive thing. Pretty bad. So did COVID-19 stop by? Cool. Okay. So into into the and then good morning, Sean. And I'm gonna mute Siam. Very good. Siam will unmute himself when he comes back, hopefully. So good. Okay. Hey, I popped the meeting minutes into the chat. So be sure to pull up the meeting minutes. List yourself as having attended. And and I may or may not have to oust one of you for having friends. So someone clearly told their friends about the need to star Meshery, and I suspect it's one of the people on this call. So great. So Siam, if you don't mind, if you mute when you're not speaking, that'll help. Just because there's the occasional background noise. Nice, beautiful. Okay, good. Meeting minutes. Please help take notes as you guys go. That would be wonderful. Is this Mr. Singh? Is this Ashish? I wonder. I don't know. And then Chandresh is with us as well. Okay, so a couple of things as we get going. And most of us have been on this particular call in the past, but some of us might have only been on the community call before. So just as a refresher, go ahead, Shubham. Nice. Okay. Okay. Good. Anyway, uh, most of you guys have been on the community call. I think most of you have been on this call. I thought I would just say briefly that we have a couple of calls a week. The one on Wednesdays, this one, it's kind of a development call. It's almost like a scrum meeting in some respects. So we just kind of go around, catch up with everybody. Everybody gets a chance to talk about work that they're either doing or maybe demo some work that they're doing or talk about things that they might be working on upcoming. It's great. And then on the Friday community call, it's a bit more general in nature, a bit more updates in the ecosystem at large. And it's a broader invitee list and things. So Just a quick review of what the meetings are like. I am sharing the meeting minutes. Some of us joined later than others, so I'm going to post a link to the meeting minutes in the chat again. And then just before we start going around to each person on the call, I can't help but be really excited about the fact that someone has clearly told their friends about Meshery this morning or today, which is great because there's like 13 new stars on the project or something, so that's awesome. Which means, so I don't know if anybody, does anyone want to claim that? If you, I guess maybe a way of saying it, if you haven't told your friends to star Meshery or about Meshery, please do. One of the things that each of you will hopefully take pride in is ultimately getting Meshery listed in the CNCF's landscape. So I think all of you are aware that we do a lot with the CNCF. Oh, by the way, I guess we'll give this update on Friday, but last Friday I approved the latest CNCF sandbox project, service mesh interface. And so while I don't think we will probably do a press release later, just at least in and amongst us, and maybe we'll do some tweeting about it, but SMI has now been donated to the CNCF and will become a new sandbox project. So I don't believe that it's in the, I don't think it's listed in this, in like officially been announced yet, but just wanted to make sure you guys knew, because that's certainly part of where I've been spending my time the last couple of weeks. So right now, I think if you can, it's pretty small. I'm going to zoom in. In this section of the landscape under service mesh, there's now an SMI. And what is sadly, obviously missing from right about here is the Meshery icon. So thanks to you guys, as of right now, we only need 102 more stars before we can get Meshery into the landscape here. So good. Okay. The other thing that I've foreshadowed for a little while now is not only will we look to have the Meshery icon here and have Meshery listed in the landscape, but much more than that, you can see we would look to have Meshery donated to the CNCF and have it be a CNCF project. So eventually, hopefully, that card, that Meshery logo, would also have a small blue box around it that would talk about it being in the sandbox. So Linkerd is an incubating project, which means it's a little bit more advanced. This is Containerd is a graduated project. What's interesting is I'm not seeing any designation for the sandbox projects. That's too bad. Sandbox projects don't receive as much marketing love, if you will, but still a very awesome thing to have a project in there. So, okay, good. All right. Well, enough of me blabbering on. Let's go through some issues. I know some of you have either been working on some, and some of you are maybe looking for a couple to work on. So, in no particular order, feel free to jump in and start. I'm just starting to take some notes. Excuse me. I tell you what, man, getting really good with all of the most common Indian names. The Singh throws me off sometimes. And then Chandrash, I've gotten about as far as I think a P on yours. I'm still working on it. But anyway, point is, who'd like to go first? And we've got Kanishkar on as well. I know Kanishkar has something to demo, and I've seen a few pull requests from Ashish and from Gunjan.
So highly,
Hey, Shubham.
I think I should start. Like I was waiting someone to start, but okay, I will start. So I assigned myself to issue number 723. I will share the link.
723.
Okay, just
All right.
so I assigned myself in this issue where command message ctl does not give any output. Like it give output of 2 or 3 lines blank. So there should be a particular message like help or something, so that user can get any idea about what message ctl does also. So I was discussing this issue with Anand. So like how we can do that, because he's more like working for a long time in Messi CTL also. So like we concluded that we can use length 0. If length is not 0, then this and this. But later Anand suggested that we should change the architecture of root.go or a whole Messi CTL, so that after sometimes if the project get more bigger and bigger, there won't be any problem to change. So I think Anand can give Anand have something to say regarding this.
Hello,
Hey, Anand.
I'm audible.
Yep.
Yeah, so actually, I was looking through the issue and I found out that the version flag that is added to that root.go, that was the main issue. Because of that, when we changed back that particular portion of the code, it was working fine just like before, but the flag was not working. So I've gone through some more of command lines which uses Cobra and other CLI tools. So I found out that they mostly use for the help message that is generated just by typing mesctl or other command line tool like kubectl. They hard code it, and by using that hard code, they just print out that simply if the length is 0. And for flags, they define other functions and uses those functions for using those flags for the particular subcommands. So I was thinking more and more about the architecture of mesctl. Like it's going to be a big project, and if it become complex, if mesctl become complex, then it will be hard then to change that architecture. And what we can do now is like we can make a repository and gradually make that progress, and with that we can use that mesctl that we use now.
Oh, okay. You mean to put Meshery CTL into its own repo?
Yeah, that would help for like architecture wise, because if for now we release both Messery and mesctl at the same time, but
Well, yeah. Well, we don't
like
actually. We I mean, it's a good. Sorry. Go ahead, Anand. Finish your thought.
No, I was trying to do it to you.
Yeah, so I'm typing notes as we go. So, uh, suggesting to split out Meshery CTL from Meshery repos, which has its benefits in terms of, well, like one of the benefits of splitting the two into individual repositories is just a little bit of the psychological overhead, like the mental, the cognitive load of like navigating the folder structures, and just kind of the larger that something is, the more that it is to be concerned with. And so separating them out and having Meshery CTL in its own repo is like, it's very clear. You're only messing with that code. You're only building that code. It's its own standalone binary. It's kind of like I think that just for that alone makes some intuitive sense. It just sort of feels a bit natural. Um, I like this. This is a good suggestion. It's one that we've spoken to once or twice in the past. It continues to be a good suggestion. There are okay. Let me say that there's another good reason for splitting them out is to be able, just like you're independently building them, that you can easily be independently releasing them. Today, we independently release independent. We independently release Meshery and Meshery CTL in so much as if there's a well, okay. Yeah, see, the issue today is that we don't really release Meshery. It's we don't have a release. Well, we have a release strategy. We haven't implemented the strategy today. If you merge into master in Meshery, that code goes live. And I think it was on either this call last week or the community meeting where we kind of went through the fact that Watchtower is used in the project. And when a new container image is pushed to Docker Hub, to the Meshery, any of the Meshery repositories on Docker Hub, that Watchtower running locally will, as part of the Meshery project, it'll pull down the latest version of Meshery. And in some respects, like we do have a release process, it's just not gated. It's not well controlled. The control is when a branch merges to master, boom, it's released. And that doesn't work well for a few reasons. We've talked about having two different channels, a stable channel and an edge channel, and we need to get there. I guess if we go back into last week's notes, I thought it was on this call that we looked at how releases work. But let me ask this: is anyone interested in working on the Meshery's build and release process to kind of correct the behavior that I was just talking about right now?
Lee, I'm audible.
Yep.
Sign here. Yeah, I'm audible.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep. We're good. Hit sign.
Lee, I just getting into the discussion of building releases in Meshery.
Yeah.
So last time I'm checking the Azure dev spaces. So just a kind of a merge into the what they are doing to in Kubernetes. So one of the very interesting I am talking about interesting article in that if you have a Kubernetes cluster out there, so every time and that Kubernetes cluster in Azure, so you have when you pull that code, every time you merge it or build that code, so they have pulled down to the Azure architecture, and then our Azure architecture hit that, and then go to the production environment. So in that cases, that what the challenge is that every time you changes the code, you have to require the two round trip to the production environment. One you have the local, and then you have the master out there. So could we do in Mishri kind of a that? So we have currently in I think two control. Okay, one is to managing this service. So we could do is that, so every time the developer have to control the sandbox environment in my local machine. So rather than going to the production environment, you have the sandbox environment in the local machine. So we can test it out, and if everything goes working correctly, then we might that go into the production.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So Sham, let me put a link to the Meshery's build and release strategy, which kind of incorporates part of what you're talking about now. In the way that it mostly does that is, in part, it does that through describing two different distribution channels. One that's a stable one and one that's an edge one. Which is related to what you're saying. What you're saying is, hey, maybe it would be ideal if part of the build process automatically deployed Meshery to a test environment, like a sandbox environment, and then maybe ran some feature tests. That would be fantastic, particularly if that was automated. So I guess Sam, my suggestion there is to have a read through this doc and place some comments in there. You'll get a sense of where it is that we are in implementing the strategy versus where it is that we are in terms of like having completed, or where we need to go. But this is, and actually maybe even particularly for you, this might be a good place to kind of dig in and see if you can advance the project. Because this isn't necessarily, this is a great place for anyone who wants to focus a little bit on DevOps and not just in Go or what have you. But it's very meaningful to the project because right now we don't have a lot of control over when it is that someone gets a new version of Meshery. We have some control, but not enough. So Anand is accurate in that we're sort of semi-independently releasing Meshery CTL and Meshery today. We make a Meshery release whenever we merge a PR to master. We make a Meshery CTL release when we merge a PR to master and there is a tag present, a version tag present in Git hub. And so the two can be released independent in that regard, depending upon what's included in the PR. So the reason, I think the big reason why we haven't split out the two into independent repositories, because right now, hopefully everyone is familiar with the fact that Meshery CTL is just a folder, more or less, inside of the Meshery project itself. If we were to take this folder and move it into its own repo, that would be a little cleaner. These artifacts, these independent components would live, would have their own clearly separated life cycle. There's a couple of reasons why we haven't gotten there. I think that that Anand's counsel is well placed for where Meshery will hopefully be. That at some point it will become painful enough that we do need to pull it out. There's two big reasons why it isn't pulled out today. One, because of what we were just saying about the build and release process, that pulling it out means that we've got more components to manage and coordinate individually. Like, because if you consider, and I guess by that what I mean is, if you consider that there's the Meshery repository, and then within the layer 5 IO org, there is the console repository, the Meshery IO repository, the layer 5 one, and then one for Octarine, Istio, for the TAP, for Linkerd, for the workshop. There's the one for, there's some that I don't think you guys have necessarily seen before or interacted with. Point being is, when you pull them out independently, just like when you deploy microservices, when you have more repos, there's more to manage. And so, given that we've yet to invest significantly in implementing our build and release strategy, that in some respects would put us further behind, because we would have more to coordinate, but haven't matured as a community, as a project, to coordinating them all well. The second reason, and this is probably the biggest of any of the reasons, is because as we look to garner, holy cow, look, we've got 2 more stars. That's great. Nice. As we look to garner more stars, more support, more eyes on the project, as you guys are out there being project ambassadors and telling people about the works here, and you begin to take pride in what you've accomplished here, that for most people, and basically for everyone who comes to evaluate the project, what they do is they say, all right, well, this Meshery thing, like that's interesting. Could be a good tool to use. Hey, I wonder, like, and tell me if this is wrong, but I'm sure that each one of you, as you go to search for a tool and you're like, hey, I need a service mesh management tool, or how do I, and I've never tried this, but if I do a service mesh, if I do service mesh manager, across all of GitHub, all right, well, we get an Open Tech Institute thing that's not on service meshes. Okay. That's too bad. We should really change some of our tags. Service mesh management. Oh, okay. Oh, this Meshery, the service mesh management. Okay, this could be what I'm looking for. Okay, well, does anyone use this thing? It's like, is this even, do they update it? Okay, it looks like it's active. There's some movement here. Great. And then, yeah, well, some people liked it. No, that's good. Okay. Well, they liked it more than they liked whatever this is, this Istio adapter thing. Okay, well, cool. I should probably try this one instead, because, it looks like what I need. So hopefully you guys get what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when people come to evaluate a project, they look at the main repo and they go, well, this is how popular it is right here. And what they fail to understand is, well, no, actually, like the Meshery CTL repo, oh, it's actually popular. It's got some stars. Actually, it's the one that was updated recently. And it turns out Meshery hasn't been updated for, 2-3 weeks. But Meshery CTL, the other repo, it was updated 2 days ago. And the point being is that people will fail to see that. What they will see is, and what they won't take the time to go research is, the fact that, like, oh, maybe there's multiple repos, and to really assess like the collection of all of the activities across all the repos. They're just going to look at the main one and judge it based on that. And so that's the biggest logical reason behind this. The point by which, after the project like makes some of those milestones, gets into the landscape, gets into the CNCF, or whatever those milestones are, or to the extent that it's just too painful to have Meshery CTL in the same repo, then we would bump it out. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. In the meantime, yeah, if we can bring back the functionality, this is something of a regression issue. The fact that we don't have help text. Anand or Shubham, could you guys say one more time what you were saying about the reserved keyword missing, and that being the cause of the issue for why we have this regression?
Heli. So, I was not saying reserved. Actually, I was saying the flag, the version flag, which is added in Messery CTL.
Oh,
So there are a couple of columns like short description, long description, and the command subcommand name. And there is another column which is run. Inside that, we have a func which accepts Cobra objects, like Cobra variables. So it is by default commented, but we are using that for issuing version command flag. So by removing that, it's working fine, but version command won't. The shorthand version command won't work. And if we let it be, then we have another option like hard coding the message. Yeah, in root.go.
huh. Yeah, ideally. Oh, and root.go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Ideally, the help text that we have, we wouldn't. I don't know if when you say hard coded, if you mean that we'll have to repeat a description of that help text in multiple areas of the project.
Can you repeat again? I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
heard.
Of yeah, ideally, the help text that's shown to people, we wouldn't have to hard code that into the project or into the Meshery CTL files more than just once. Uh,
No, we don't have to repeat that in multiple options. Like we will have multiple options. Like when we like it's for just for temporary purpose for now.
okay,
But when we will change some things, then we can figure that out.
okay, okay, nice. It sounds like it sounds like you guys have a good grip on it, and that whether it's just matching when there are no arguments or going back to, I guess, mess with some of those global flags that that will have the help text back soon. So, Anand, feel free to ping me if you have a different perspective or kind of want to continue the discussion on splitting out Meshery CTL.
Actually, I was just saying that for now, like just for the architecture base. Like we will work on that directory and Messery repo, but side by side we will work on that other another repo of Messery CTL so that the architecture will change gradually.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's a good way of getting to the point where if there is a separate repo that is not used at or not the one that we're releasing from, but if there's a separate repo that then we can build and release CI around, then when the time comes to switch over, it will be easier or cleaner. I think that makes sense. Nice. Okay. Very good. Who's next?
Oh, hi. So shall I go ahead if somebody is?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So what I've been working on is so basically currently all the communication, I mean, between Meshery front end and Meshery and the Meshery cloud is authenticated using sessions. So we are trying to shift towards using JWT or JSON Web Tokens instead of sessions. So that's what I've been working on, and yeah, for now I think I made some like decent progress with shifting for I mean the communication between Meshery and Meshery cloud is like almost convert I mean has come almost completely shifted to JWT. So yeah, I guess that's what I've been working on.
Nice. Well, I'll characterize that a little bit more and kind of the reasons
Yeah.
behind it, in case people have questions. So today when you bring up Meshery, which apparently I need to be running. Today when you bring up Meshery, you'll get prompted with two choices of signing in, choosing a provider, and oftentimes I'm starting up Meshery on my machine now. And if you choose the kind of the Meshery cloud, you will get prompted to create a session. Do a social auth, which is kind of the better of the two user experiences that we have today. So here I'm creating a session using one of these four popular social auth, these identity providers. And so in this case, I'm authorizing Meshery against, or I'm authenticating my session against my Twitter account, it just so happens. And that's great. Because of that, I can, I get some amount of session persistence, or I get some amount of authentication back to Meshery Cloud, which will allow me to retrieve some of the tests that I've been running. And actually, yesterday I ran a 3-hour performance test, whatever this divided by 60 is. Divided by 60 is 180 minutes. Divided by 60 is 3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours. I did a 3-hour performance test because because Ticketmaster is looking at using Meshery very heavily, and they're looking at doing longevity tests, kind of soak tests, and so I was doing that. Anyway, point is, back to what Kanishkar was saying, is that this browser-based or cookies and sessions work well for browser-based interactions. For the browser as a client of Meshery server, creating a session and using cookies works pretty well. And we've been using it for a while. And as a user, you can essentially go sessionless, if you will. You can use the local provider, which doesn't really remember much or doesn't persist. It's basically like using Meshery without a user account. And as such, I've used Meshery without a user account on this same machine in the past. And so it's got some ephemeral storage that it uses inside of Docker. But in general, it's a lesser user experience here, is what I'm saying. In general, another area of difference would be if I'm using the local provider and I had previously connected Grafana or Prometheus, this local provider, this single user mode, it may not remember where my Grafana and Prometheus connections are. Anyway, this style of authenticating works well in the browser. What it does not work well for, the use of cookies and sessions like this, is for interactions with other types of clients or from other types of clients, specifically Meshery CTL. So as people go to interface with Meshery using Meshery CTL, which I'm going to bring up, up until recently, it's been fine that they don't establish a session. And that's because most of Meshery CTL's functionality has been about managing the life cycle of Meshery itself. So that means starting Meshery, checking its status, stopping Meshery, updating Meshery with if there are new images to be pulled, checking the version of Meshery and Meshery CTL, looking at logs from the Meshery server, looking at this help text, or cleaning up the Docker Compose file. All of those commands fall under the same category of lifecycle management for Meshery itself. So all up until about a week or more ago, Meshery CTL has only been about managing the life cycle of Meshery. It has not been about actually performing the same functionality that you as a user can do in Meshery UI. With the addition of the perf command, Meshery CTL as a client of Meshery for the first time has the ability to invoke Meshery functionality and tell Meshery server to do some things, and specifically to do a performance test. Well, that means that, and so because of that, we do want to allow users, like if I want to kick off that 3-hour performance test, it may be the case that I don't want to leave my browser open and minimized off to the corner for 3 hours. Rather, I want to sort of set and forget some long-lived thread, process on my machine that's doing a long perf test. And I want that the results, when I sign in again, I want to be able to see the results as Lee. And when I sign in, 2 months from now, I want to be able to go back to those same results. If I don't authenticate, that won't happen. And from the command line here, it's not feasible for me to for Meshery to use sessions and cookies. The cookies are just not present here in my CLI, whereas they are present in the browser. And the browser has a session store and facilitates for that style of authentication, that style of interaction. As Kanishkar has been moving Meshery as a project, switching it out from cookies and sessions as the way of storing our session info, moving it over to use of JSON web tokens over to JWT. That the most significant reason to do that is it's arguably better in general. You can have discussions on that, but specifically JWTs are better and more convenient to use when you're doing CLI interaction. And so this is very helpful and needed. I was just having a partnership discussion with HashiCorp yesterday about Layer 5 and HashiCorp doing a number of things. And one of those was HashiCorp agreeing, they were agreeing on the call, that they'll take Meshery CTL, I'm sorry, not Meshery CTL, they'll take Meshery and run Meshery as part of their release process. When they make a new release of console, they'll have Meshery hammer on console for a while, do a performance test. And they're not going to have an engineer sit there in the UI and run that performance test. They're going to need to invoke a CLI command like this. So lots of context for what Kanishkar is working on. He has a PR open right now to switch from cookies and sessions to JWTs between Meshery as a server and Meshery Cloud as a provider. So go check out his PR if you're interested. Go test it out as well. It's always good to get more eyeballs on PRs. Does anybody have comments or questions on what Kanishkar is working on? $7:32. Okay. Given the time, who's next? I'm hoping it's Nikhil.
Yeah,
Yep.
immediately. I
We can kind of hear you, mostly.
well, actually I didn't get what you were saying.
Oh, was curious as to whether or not you have wrapped up the provider UI changes that you were working on.
Oh, Regret, actually, I've almost completed the UI part. It's only the backend part which I need to make add the API for fetching the description of the provider.
Oh, nice. Okay. Nice. Okay. Good. Maybe we won't describe it any further, just based on time. Anything that you wanted to chat through on that, or are you all good? Good. Okay. And Nikhil, you're kind of cutting in and out, so I'm not sure if you actually said anything, but nice. Oh, well, Chandresh, do you want to chat about an issue?
My voice was not clear, so I am replying on the chat.
Oh, nice. Okay, I heard you now. Chandresh, do you want to talk about the this issue here, 731? I don't know. You know what? Chandresh was on the call earlier, but is not on the call now. So very good. Uh, Shivai or anyone else? So we've got Gunjan, Ashish, and Shivai, I think.
Hey Leah, like I wanted to talk you something uh, about Professor Vindas. Like I also texted you, but I think you missed.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, you're right. I did. Yeah. So Shubham is is bringing up a good topic, which is our partnership with UEM Jaipur. Uh, Shubham, the most direct answer, or the question sort of is, hey, the partnership is essentially, complete and um, is essentially complete and is a real thing. Um, are there any next steps? What should we do next? My first ask of Professor Doss is to either co-author or simply author one himself. It's two asks. One is a blog entry on layer5.io/blog that talks about our partnership, the fact that the three of you guys have all doing very well, and it's not just the three of you guys; it's the Ashish and Gunjan now being now wearing maintainer hats of the landscape. Basically, to ask Professor Doss to write his own blog, or I can help write one with him, and for us to publish that on Layer 5 so that people can see what some of the fruits of that partnership have been. Part of that is kind of the second ask, which is to have Layer 5 and Meshery listed on the university website, like have the partnership listed on their website. And that blog post will help with that, because he can list that same blog post on the UEM Jaipur site. Does that make sense, Shubham?
Completely. Like I will ask Professor Das, but Currently, our college is closed for 1 month, so
Oh,
I
right.
don't know how much they will apply to my uh, questions or so. But like, I will definitely ping Professor Das.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. No, and I think this is a good ask. I think he'll be inclined to do it, maybe even during his time off, because my sense of our conversation was that he was, or he is personally invested um, in what we're doing, and I think wants to personally benefit him as well. So good. Okay. Well, we've got time to talk about some other things. So, Shivai, if we don't catch up in these next 8 minutes, I think we may want to catch up one on one to make sure that you've got your next big item to bite off. And so, with the time that we have left, maybe Gunjan, do you want to talk through some things? That's Meshery console. Great. So Gunjan is working on some error and static checks in the console adapter. That's great. That will be, I will certainly talk about that, tell HashiCorp about that. Hopefully, some of you know Nick Jackson. He may be joining, or rejoining rather, the community calls to work on that adapter. Okay. So Gunjan's working on a new version of our Getting Started progress page. Actually, this is a good thing to show to everyone on the community real quick, in part because it might be a collaboration point for one of you. There's a small challenge that Gunjan is looking at that that I think he would encourage, he'd welcome some collaboration on, and that is on the Meshery.io site. There's a he's improving the getting started section, and it's under this pull request here. So I'll put a link to this pull request in the meeting minutes. You'll notice that he is doing a fantastic job of improving the getting started section. So if you look at the getting started section on Meshery.io today, this is it. It's like, hey, run Meshery, and it's okay. It's kind of interesting in that you can show and hide certain sections, but it's not the best. It doesn't necessarily quickly draw your eyes in to your platform of choice, to your tooling of choice. And so Gunjan is improving that by doing this. He's creating, basically, this is kind of what the new version that he's working on looks like. And it's certainly an improvement, but one of the challenges in the current version of that pull request is it not being responsive. And so you can see the overlap that happens as you squish down the screen. So if anyone is interested in taking a look, I think Gunjan is looking for feedback on this PR. If you're interested, please just put your name under the reviewers or the assignees or what have you, and just engage with Gunjan. Lastly, Gunjan is working on some SVG animations, which are good. Gunjan, did you want to show what that looks like now? Oh, Shivai is stepping up to help jump in on that PR. Thank you, Shivai. Ashish is with us. I keep saying Gunjan because, wow, look at that. That's twice. I'm sitting here talking about Gunjan and he's not on the call right now. So anyway, thank you, Shivai. He'll be very happy about that. Okay, good. A few minutes left. Who's got something that we didn't talk about, or who's got something to talk about?
Lee,
Yeah. You.
Lee, can we catch up after this meeting? I have something to discuss regarding your project. I think we can do one-on-one call after this meeting.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sam, okay. Oops. Meshery development meeting. Okay. So Shivai, maybe just a quick couple of words from you. So I think most of you guys are kind of back home for a little while now. Sorry, you're back home now and will be home for a little while. Have you been able to, at this point, you've been able to build the Meshery project and have a functional development environment, I suspect.
Yeah, I have set it up locally on my machine, and so I was just having a look at the PR, that you had referred to me. That is the UI improvement, right? So I had a couple of questions regarding that. So it was mainly related to the performance preferences. So I was just looking at, like whenever we are selecting, like whatever, like instance that we are selecting, that the issue that you created. So what exactly is going on is that I think so. The issue that is like we are facing is that it's not able to save the last memory or the last preferences that the user has selected, and that is why once we go back to the preferences tag, we're not able to see that. So should we create sort of a local storage or variable which can store those preferences for us? Because right now it's not able to store them.
Yeah. Hey, Nikhil, can you? Shivai is picking up Raghav's old pull request on persisting user preferences. I know you implemented part of those. Do you have some pointers for Shivai on which REST interface we should be using to push those preferences?
Because either what we can do is that since it's not like sort of temporary based, so we can either go with the local storage option, like the built-in local storage that we have, so we can use that. Or if we want that the preferences of the user should stay, we can sort of implement that in the database as well.
Yeah.
We can create a separate user preferences.
I guess my voice will be breaking.
We can hear you now.
So
But Nikhil, you're right. Your voice was breaking a bit. We didn't hear that.
yeah. Now is it clear?
Yep.
I'm speaking from my laptop.
Yep.
So as per the thing is there for storing the preferences, there is a store.js file, and for fetching that fetching that preferences, we have APIs, REST APIs configured in the datafetch.js or the server.go. We have APIs configured over there, from which we can add the Go file that we want, the function. And for that, Raghav, I think, has already made a new file for saving the preferences. So we are already using that kind of preferences setting in other pages, like the cluster part, the cluster thing that we are saving. We are already using that kind of preferences saving thing option.
So you can have a look at that part. Otherwise, I'll share you the link where we are already using that.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
link.
think so. That will be beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, because we are already using a part in which we are fetching the preferences or already saved configurations that we have been using earlier using that API, which is being saved on the session part. So you can take some help from that.
Okay.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah, good.
Thanks for improvising, Nikhil, on your voice. And Shivai, you're right about like your line of thinking about the persistence and um, and the reason why I was suggesting something slightly or basically the same thing or slightly different is that Nikhil and Girish had recently uh, done the exact same thing, or rather that the yeah, there should just be a small bug happening. That there is irrespective of whether or not someone chooses to use the local provider or the Meshery cloud provider. Yes, it's true that those preferences will be ultimately persisted differently based on their provider selection. That shouldn't matter in terms of like the code needed for the front end because you'd be hitting the same REST API either way,
Yeah, exactly.
which is probably exactly what you were saying. Cool. All right, well, we're 3 minutes over. Anybody have anything else? I think Siam, we're gonna catch up here in a minute. But Kanishkar, I'm on page 1 of the JWT PDF that you sent over, so I've not made it very far.
Yeah, I went through it a bit. Yeah, I got some. I'm working on it. I'm actually working on even the refresh tokens. I'll let you know once I'm done. Like, yeah,
Nice. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. Well, thanks all. And whoever is getting their friends to star Meshery, I just know that I get a chuckle every time I see a new star. That's awesome. I can't help but keep it going back and just checking. Oh, 201. Look at that. Okay. Okay. Good. Well, thanks all. Yeah, 201. Boom. Okay. I'll see you all on Friday. I'll probably see most of you in Slack before then, though. So.
Okay, Lee, can we have what later times? Just 10 or 5 minutes. We can wrap up the discussion.
Sounds good. I'll
So,
let me message you separately. We'll end this call and we'll jump back on. So